being curious and to stay curious. And that's kind of like, I remember one of my lunches, he said that after you've passed 35 years, you have to work every day to stay curious. I mean, it's very easy to, in a way, to sort of, it's comfortable to be in a sort of perspective, to be in a worldview that you're sort of comfortable with. And but I find it very stimulating to try to, to challenge that. And having these lunches is one way of doing that, to always try to be curious about things, to never, get the feeling of, I know this, I've done this before, and always, try new perspectives and find new ideas. So I think curiosity is absolutely one of those things.
Smart city. What is it about? A livable city. How do we create it? Thank you so much for giving your valuable time to listen to Urbanistica podcast season number 2. I am Mustafa Sharif, an urban planner, and you're more than welcome to join my big journey of exploring the making of smarter and more livable cities. Don't forget to follow Instagram account to see the stories behind the scenes, and also subscribe the YouTube channel to see the live talks. Let's get in touch on LinkedIn, share your reflections with us, with Urbanistica community. Recommend the podcast to people you think are interested in Urbanistica topics. Are you ready for a new episode? Let's go for it.
Today, I'm super happy. We're going to talk about the social city, how to be social in the city and meet people that you don't know. My guest is the master when it comes to meeting people. He had lunch separately with more than 1,000 people. So I have the pleasure to welcome you, Ulf, to Urbanistica podcast.
Thank you. It's a pleasure being here.
Thank you so much for giving your time. How are you doing?
I'm fine, thanks. I'm pretty, what do you call it? Unstressed. I'm not that stressed. My whole business is, like you said, it's like centered around my lunches and meeting people. And I do a lot of conferences and seminars and stuff, and a lot of talks. And of course, when things like this happens, there's not that easy to meet people anymore. So it's a bit slower, but I'm sort of getting used to it. So I think it's kind of nice, because then you can sort of concentrate and focus on things that you really want to do.
So which one is best for you, ERL or digital meetings?
Well, I've done some digital lunches, some virtual lunches actually, and that was better than I thought. But I must say that nothing beats to sit down and sort of, look the other person in the eye and actually be in the same room. So, I guess I'm old school in that sense, but nothing beats like a human meeting, IRL.
I can imagine, and I totally agree with you. Maybe I'm old school too. I think the physical meeting face to face is the best ever.
Yeah. I don't think it has to do with old school. Actually, I think that's the way human works.
Yeah.
I mean, but it's interesting also because now you come to think about more, what kind of meetings do I actually have to meet the person personally, and what kind of meetings can I do virtually? So that's one thing that's pretty good with all the things that are happening, that you have to prioritize, and you can actually do meetings virtually that you don't really have to do physically.
Yes, exactly. Well, Ulf, you're our storyteller. So how would you like to introduce yourself, and please tell us what are you passionate about?
Yeah. Well, I'm passionate about eating lunches. Well, I'm a journalist. I've been working as a business journalist all my life. And I do this, I came up with this idea of meeting people that I haven't met before for lunch about 7 or 8 years ago. I was getting this new job as editor-in-chief of a business magazine called Veckans Affärer, and that was my way of trying to meet readers and to get ideas and inputs. So that's where the whole idea started. So then I invited people to contact me for lunches, and then it sort of got out of hand. And I've been doing this actually every day now. for the last 5 years.
Wow. So how many people you have on
Well,
the
it's about it never started as an idea of, I'm going to do like 1,000 lunches. So it just started like, I like to meet people, and as a journalist to get inputs and ideas and meet new persons. And then after a while, it struck me, maybe I should, maybe I should take a picture and put it on social media, and maybe I should start counting my lunches. So, well, today it's about 1,100 lunches, but there's a lot of breakfasts and fikas and stuff which I haven't sort of counted in that number. So it's maybe it's about 1,500. I don't really know.
Wow. But are you passionate about meeting people or getting new ideas or eating lunches?
No, I think that there's a lot of things about my lunches that I like, of course, otherwise I wouldn't do it. But I think that's kind of a magic in that sense, where you sit down with a person that you haven't met before. And I don't really, I never sort of do any researches or prepare what kind of questions I'm going to ask. I just sit down, and then we have a conversation. And then to see where that conversation leads. And then when you start talking about things that are passionate for you or the person that I'm meeting, the conversation never gets boring. So I think that's the sort of the essence of, because I can talk about this for how long as, but so you just have to stop me. There's a lot of things in our community, I think, and society today, which is very driven by that you're going to meet someone and then you have a purpose with that and you're going to achieve something, and there's nothing wrong with that. But everything is so sort of directed against that focus. And I think it's good to sit down for a lunch where you don't have an agenda. You don't have like, where is this going to lead to? I don't know, but it's going to lead to something. And you don't know what that is. So that's kind of the way of building a drama into your everyday life.
Yeah. So you mean it's better to be a natural and you don't need to have a super fixed agenda, questions and time fixed, right?
Right. I'm sort of, I have my values. I have my sort of driving forces that I sort of want to, things and subjects and questions and themes that I want to sort of, talk about and where I want to be. Because there's a lot of people connecting to me wanting to have lunch, so I have to choose. And then I choose sort of from a perspective of, I want to have a mix. I want to talk to people who sort of wants to talk about subjects that I also care about. So it's not that I'm not like a boat drifting on the sea going everywhere. It's, I have a sort of direction in what I'm doing, but I don't have like an agenda that I'm going to do exactly this or this or this.
Yeah. But Ulf, how do you keep the conversation interesting? I mean, you're meeting so different people and might some of them being boring or not really talk about the things that you're interested in. So how do you keep this energy in between you two?
Well, I think it's first of all, these lunches, I take a picture and I write a short story about what we talk about, and then I post it on social media. And there's a lot of people seeing these posts, and I think that, and I always say, like, bring your ideas to lunch. So I think that people that are contacting me, they sort of, they know what it's all about. They know that they have to, so it sort of makes the conversation interesting to start off with, because there's a subject or there's a question or there's something that they want to talk about. But all my lunches, I always sort of come back to the same question, and that's, why are you doing what you're doing? And that sort of taps into that you're talking about. What are you passionate about, and what are your driving forces? And everybody has that. You just have to, ask the question. And normally, maybe that's not really what you do when you meet a new person over lunch, usually. But once you start talking about that, it never gets boring. It's always interesting.
But what do you gain by all of this? I mean, you're meeting different people, different interests, and you're a journalist. So what is the output for you?
Well, like I said, I work with different kind of content. So I'm a journalist, so I write stories. I've been, like a writing journalist all my life, but I don't do that much writing now, actually. I do more talking. So So this is a way for me to collect ideas and people and different contents which I then can use for different channels. So I do a lot of moderating, for example. I do a lot of seminars. I work as a editor for seminars, and because of all my lunches, I know a lot of people. So I know, I can pick this guy or this woman to put on this panel on stage, because then we can talk about this. So this is a way of, what do you call it, like test shooting persons. If you sit down with a person for lunch, after a while it's pretty obvious, is this person going to be good on stage, for example? So I see my lunches as like, there's a lot of data that I'm accessing, and then I take all that data and then I see patterns, and I can make combinations, and I can put together these kind of datas in different kind of medias. It could be like I said, seminars, conferences, could be articles. I do quite a lot of consulting. I do, people ask me, how do I tell my story in the best way? So I can help them with that. So this is not, it's it's a lifestyle for me to meet people like this, but it's also my business idea. That's the only business idea I have. I have my lunches, and then things happens from my lunches.
Yeah,
That's the magic again.
exactly. That's super smart, actually. And do you keep in touch with people like just as friends that you don't need to have a business in between, just like a normal friends?
Yeah, I would say that. I've gotten a lot of new friends sort of through my lunches, and I think that lunch is the format in for the lunch is pretty good in that way, because you have like a limited kind of time. You have like 45 minutes or an hour, and then you can break up from the lunch. There's nothing, strange about that. And if you sort of connected through the lunch, that's, it's you can always pick up that, like in a couple of months or weeks or whatever. And so I'm not, well, I'm a networker in that sense, that I meet a lot of people, but I'm not a, what do you call it, like an active networker that I always, I keep emailing my lunches or I make connections. It's just, I meet people, and if things happens. Otherwise,
Yeah.
they don't.
Do you also get this feeling in the beginning when you meet someone, oh, there's gonna be a good, let's say, friendship or business, like you get this magic harmony?
Yeah. That has a lot to do with, conversation, of course. And when you sit down and talk with someone over lunch, it's pretty interesting to see how people, some people, they talk a lot, some people they talk less, some people, they are more interested in finding, kind of a dynamic conversation. And, it's a bit like playing in an orchestra in a way. You have different instruments, and they have to sort of, maybe one is playing just solo. That's not that very interesting if you're two people. And so, it's kind of hard to say exactly what it is, but I think you know what I mean. It's kind of,
Yeah, yeah,
you got a chemistry, and you
sure.
can feel that pretty
Mm.
fast when you sit down with the person. Is this gonna lead somewhere? Or is it not?
Yeah. Do you feel that you became a psychologist?
Yeah, 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 yeah. That's true. Because when you start asking that kind of questions, what are your driving forces? What are your passions? It's kind of, I think it's not that usual maybe to talk about, and especially with a person that you never met before. And it's a bit like, meeting what do you say, like meeting a stranger on a train. You sort of, maybe you start talking about things that you haven't even told your family, whatever. So I'm like a business therapist.
Do you get tired every time you tell about your passion and so on, or every new person is a new story, a new day for you?
No, I wouldn't say that, because there's a lot of people saying that to me. How do you sort of, how do you get the energy of meeting people like this? But it's the other way around for me, actually. I get a lot of energy. I get like a boost from my lunches. So it's almost like some kind of, like a high, like a chemical high, sort of, to get, because then again, it taps into that, of being curious, of finding new ideas. And that's a big, like, almost like a aha for me, when people, things fall into places, and you oh, I see you talk about this, and maybe we can connect up with that, or so it's an energy boost for me actually.
Yes, yes. And well, Ulf, as you know, I'm working with urban planning, with everything to do outside the buildings. Your lunches being in the restaurant, hotels, and so on.
Yeah.
My question is it possible to have these kinds of meetings with new people out in the city and have the same kind of conversation?
Well, yeah, absolutely. I think so. Because I mean, the thing is that when I have my lunches as sort of a hub for everything I do, I sort of, I streamlined everything for sort of adapting to my lunches. So as you know, because we had lunch, I eat lunch at a specific restaurant. That was like before it was in a hotel in the center of the city, and now it's at the museum, at the Fotografiska museum. So that's where I have my table, and that's also where I have my office. I don't have an office space somewhere. I sit at the restaurant and then I work, because then you get like, for example, when you sit in like in the hotel or in the lobby in the hotel, I think that's a perfect place to be in the city. And I like to think of the city as, there's a lot of spaces, a lot of buildings, which are actually just standing there, and then you can use them as offices or meeting places, and this also gives you sort of a natural way to contact people or to come into contact with people, especially when you sit down and you work with your laptop or whatever in a lobby, for example. It's pretty easy, or to start talking to someone beside you, or it's more easy than being on a bus or a train or whatever. So I like to think of the city as, it's a space for me, which is mine. It's my space, and I can use that space in a lot of different ways, and
Yeah,
working is one of those.
yeah. So you believe location is very important to have this conversation between you and someone you don't know.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Mm.
But it's. I mean, I think the trick is to find that, because I mean the space. I mean the city. There's a lot of people in the city, and you have a lot of spaces, and you have cafes, and you have like waiting rooms and buses and stuff. And the thing is, to find a way for people to start talking to each other, to sort of exchange ideas and stuff. And that's sort of the trick with my lunch, to find that way. So I have that way of connecting with other people.
Mm.
But but it's but I'm not. I mean, one way of doing that is, of course, to find a place where you can sit and work, and then you start chatting with people around you, and that feels kind of natural. And I think you have to find, or you don't have to, but I think the trick is to find more ways of making people to connect to each other without being sort of, forced to it.
Yeah, exactly. And is it possible for you to have this nature of conversation, even a short one, when you are outside in the city, like waiting for a bus, standing and buying something in the queue?
Yeah, it is, but I'm probably damaged. I've been doing this for so long, so I don't have any sort of problem starting talking to people in wherever I am, sort of. So I guess I'm not the sort of the average guy, but in that sense. So and the other thing about my lunch is I've been having Stockholm as my center, so this is where I have my lunches. And if you had lunches with over 1,000 people in Stockholm, you can't go anywhere. I can't move anywhere in the city without bumping into someone that I sort of had lunch with, and I really like that feeling, because then it gives me a feeling of, Stockholm is my living room in a way, if you know what I mean. I can
Yes, I
go
understand you.
anywhere. I do a lot of stuff by myself, but I'm never by myself. Always when I go out in the city, whatever, go for an ice cream or for a walk or whatever, or go to a bar, I always bump into someone that I've sort of met through my lunches, and
Mm.
that gives you I think, a very nice connected feeling. It's like a big living room.
Exactly. And do people find it a bit strange when you talk to them, like when you're waiting for a bus and let's say shopping or something, this small chit chat outside with people that you don't know? Are they
No, I
open to
don't.
you?
Yeah, I think so. I don't have a problem with that, and I think I don't know what you think, but I mean, I've been living in like, in the countryside and in Sweden all my life, and there's like this. I think there's this idea of Swedes being sort of, a bit tight and a bit stiff and hard to chit chat with. But maybe that's because I'm sort of, originally Swedish, but I don't find it that way because once you start asking, once you start talking to people, they loosen up. So it's a bit like, they may seem a bit, rough, or maybe not rough, but a bit closed when you see them first. But once you start talking, they almost always open up. So you have
Yes.
to sort of, you have to dare to scratch that surface in a way to sort of.
Exactly. I have been here for 10 years actually, and I totally agree with you that from the outside might see like people are cold and they're not really willing to give time to talk to you. But actually when you knock on the door, they will really open to you and will be very happy to chat and maybe even help you. So I understand that this is what you call a stereotype that people are not willing to talk to you, especially here in Sweden.
Yeah, I think it's a stereotype, absolutely. And I think that what it sort of comes back to that we were talking about in the beginning, that the kind of questions that I asked, like what are your passion and what are your driving forces, and once you start sort of course you can't sort of, that's not like the first question you ask the people in the queue before the kiosk in the street, but but pretty soon you can sort of try to get down to that kind of, and once you start talking about that, people open up, because I think that people are not sort of, there's like there's not a lot of people asking that kind of question, so people want to talk about that, but how do you talk about something when people don't ask you?
Yeah, yeah. Then it's the magic. This is the magic way of how
Yeah,
you.
I think so. So it
Mm.
has a lot to do with the type of questions and how you sort of pose questions to people, and of course that you actually are interested in knowing.
Yeah, yeah. So I just wanted to ask you as well, how do we ask interesting question to start this conversation, a natural conversation?
No, but like I said, I think I mean, my my favorite question is like, why are you doing what you're doing? I mean, there's a lot of, I mean, I think as a Swede, it's pretty easy to talk about, there's a few common questions like, where do you live? You can talk about housing, and what do you work with? That's like maybe the first question,
Yeah.
and so that's kind of an easy question to talk about, and you can always start with that. That's pretty, harmless. What do you do for a living? And then you can start talking about, so why do you do that for a living, and what how come you do that? And once you start talking about that, it sort of never ends, because then you have to start reflecting about, why am I actually doing what I'm doing, and how does that align to my sort of, my driving forces and my passions?
Mm.
So it's like a never-ending story once you start, pulling that string.
Yes, exactly. But you mentioned also the important thing also that you show that you're interested and you should be interested in the talk, right?
That's sort of comes back to the thing that I was saying, that I don't have an agenda, I don't have like prepared questions, because once you start doing that, I think that you start to tunnel yourself. You start to think about, what can I get from this conversation? And once you have like a goal where you want to end up, or where you want to go, then you start narrowing yourself. You're narrowing your focus, and then it also happens that you don't really listen to what the other person is actually saying, because you're so concentrated and focused on, how should I pose my next question to get
Mm.
to that goal that I'm sort of aiming for. So once you start of, when you let loose of that, you actually sit down and look the other people in the eye and actually listen to that, what that person is saying, and sort of trust yourself that you're going to come up with a question based on what that person is actually saying. You don't have to think that question beforehand. I think it's a very, very sort of magic feeling to actually do that, to actually sit down and listen to another person.
I really like it. And actually, when I started this podcast, I was listening to your TEDx talk.
Oh, yeah.
And I was thinking, okay, how can I do this conversation in the best way so it's not feel like it's gonna be natural and not really fixed as a policeman asking you a question and you need to answer, question you need to answer. So I also recommend it for all the people that listening to the podcast, watch TEDx talk about the lunches.
Thank you.
Very, very interesting. Well, when you walk in the city, you mentioned that spaces that are good for meeting, like lobbies, hotel, restaurant. Do you see other spaces that you see a potential of having a conversation, like in a park or waiting for a metro? Like some spot that okay, there's a possibility to start a conversation.
No, but I think I think quite a lot about this, because I mean that's my way of running my company, that I don't have like, I mean, it's kind of special in that sense, maybe, that you're having lunch, but there's a lot of people like me, that are entrepreneurs, and well, you can be employed as well, but we work with a laptop and we work with a phone. That's kind of the tools that we use, and we can sit anywhere. We can have this kind of digital meetings, for example. So you can see that it's very obvious in the city, like in Stockholm. There's a lot of people like me sitting in cafes and restaurants, and not to mention all these different co-working spaces. But so that's one sort of big trend, and the other trend is also that we had this discussion: what's going to happen with all the commercial spaces in the city? What's going to happen? I mean, that's pretty obvious now when we have this corona situation, for example. Nobody's shopping, nobody's going to the store. And that's a big trend as well. I think that's going to sort of keep on coming. So what do we do with these commercial spaces? And I think one thing to do is to sort of mix this up. And you can see that, for example, you can see that in hotels, like the hotel where I was having lunch. They were sort of, urging people to come there and sit and work in the lobbies, because they want to have that flow and they want to have that energy, and that also sparks conversations. You can also see that in business, in retail stores, for example, which are now opening up for people come to work and to sit and work in the stores. So that's one way of I think, in a kind of natural way, spark conversations between people who are strangers in the city, where they actually sort of sit down and work and have like a natural way of start to talk to each other.
So the secret can be also in mixed use buildings.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's been I mean, you know this better than me, because you work with this in this field, but I think, and there still is, but I mean, it's getting better. This kind of it's a very static view on what buildings are today. Like, this is your flat, this is where you live, this is like the restaurant, this is this is the shop. But I mean, everything is getting blurred nowadays. It's a bit like I said before. I like this idea of viewing the city as my space. That's my space. That's my extended living room. I don't have to have like a big flat. Of course, it has to do with if you have a family, your kids and stuff. But I have a family, but my kids are grown up, so they don't live with me anymore. So I live by myself in my flat, and that flat doesn't have to be that big. And instead, I can use all these facilities that are in the city, like the parks, the restaurants, the hotel lobbies, and whatever. So I'm. It's a bit special now with the corona. I'm spending a lot of time at my home, but usually I'm sort of never at my home. I'm always on the run, using different spaces in the city.
Yeah, that's amazing, especially for me to hear that you're really using the city, let's say 100%.
Yeah. I think that's like I was thinking about that the other day, because that was almost like it was almost like a secret that I feel like, shit, hasn't anyone sort of seen this, or is it only me that I mean, I'm so rich in that sense, because Stockholm is mine, and I can use all these areas which are sort of open for anyone to do. You can just go in there and sort of make that your own. So
I totally almost do the same. For me, I just go home to sleep and then that's it. I don't really use my flat so much. Sometimes I feel sad or guilty toward my flat because I'm not there so much.
Yeah, I know the feeling, because I have, like I said, I have two daughters that sort of moved out now, and I live in a 3-room flat, which is a bit too big for me, because so I have like one room which is only standing there. So sometimes I'm just going into that room and speak to that room to sort of,
That's super funny. Well, Ulf, if I give you a building, what different function you will put there in order to have this 100% conversation between people? Like, what are the different functions? Cafes, restaurants?
Yeah, I would say that I'm pretty, I've been, like I said, I live by myself, and I'm pretty curious about the idea of not having that much living space. I mean, I think it's pretty. I've actually tried that idea of moving into collective housing for a while. I lived there for like 5 weeks just to get the feeling of how it works and how it feels. And I like this idea of not having. We have a private space, but it's not doesn't have to be that big. And then you have like a lot of open spaces where you can do things together if you want to, where you can sort of eat together, or you can work together, or you can. So I like that. I like that way of thinking about a building not being that static. This is where you live, and this is where you eat, and so on. Like a house where you can do everything, and you can do it together if you want to. I think if you create a lot of spaces where people can sort of hang out together without being sort of forced doing it, then you have like the good. I think you have like a good. You set the sort of scene for making conversations happens and things happens.
Yes, very interesting point of view. Thank you so much, Ulf.
Yeah.
So what is the next step of your lunches? Are you going to have dinners? What do you do now? Digital lunches?
Well, yeah, for the moment I do digital lunches. I've done some digital lunches, but I can also see that people are sort of, yearning to meet people in real life. So I had like a 2-week stop for my lunch because Fotografiska sort of closed down, but now they open up again. So now I'm going to pick up my lunches again before the summer. But I had this idea of getting my lunches out in the world. So I'm having this plan of my dream is to buy like a camper van and then travel around Europe for like a
Wow.
year. Yeah. And then I can put all those, I can put some stuff in it, like, like a surfboard and a tennis racket and skis and stuff that I'm interested in. And then I just go cruising around Europe and having lunch with exciting people in Europe.
That's
So
amazing.
that's, yeah. So I was actually going to do that this autumn, but then Corona came and sort of spoiled it. But
Yes, I understand. Is there any person that you wanted to have lunch with, but the person refused?
no, it hasn't happened yet. No.
And is there any person that you want to have lunch with, like a wish list?
No, I wouldn't say that. There's a lot of people posing that question, but who's your dream lunch or you want to have? But I'm not. The thing is that I'm not. I'm interested in having lunches with new people sort of every day, because then you get what happens is that you always get like a new perspective. You always get a new view on the world seen through that person's eyes, and I think that's so magic to get that sort of. And it's hard to say that his idea is better than hers idea or whatever. So, but I also think that I mean, one of the sort of basic or fundamental things or reasons why I'm doing these lunches are that I want to be, I want to be part of making a change, because a lot of people that I'm having lunch with, they have these dreams and these ideas, and they want to be part of something. They want to change society in one way, or they do it. There's a lot of entrepreneurs, but and I like that feeling of being, being part of a change. So all my lunches are about having lunch with change makers in one sense or another. So that's sort of my. It's not a specific dream lunch, but I like to have lunch with people who have sort of, an idea of where we want to where we want to go, or what we want to do with the society.
Yeah, and I'm very happy that you give your time to record this podcast.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Well, Ulf, how would you like to summarize what we talked about and some of your reflection and 3 takeaway messages?
Yeah, that's a tough one. Well, no, but I think that, I mean, the maybe the most fundamental thing is that being curious and to stay curious. And that's kind of like, I remember one of my lunches, he said that after you've passed 35 years, you have to work every day to stay curious. I mean, it's very easy to, in a way, to sort of, it's comfortable to be in a sort of perspective, to be in a worldview that you're sort of comfortable with. And but I find it very stimulating to try to to challenge that. And having these lunches is one way of doing that, to always try to be curious about things, to never get the feeling of I know this, I've done this before, and always try new perspectives and find new ideas. So I think curiosity is absolutely one of those things. And also, like you started talking about being passionate and trying to really find your passion and your driving force, and what actually makes you tick. And I'm always on I'm on a constant quest to find that. And by posing that question to people that you meet, you have to think about it, and then you can compare that to your own views, and then so my way of lunching is also a way for me to finding out about myself, if you know what I mean. So that was 2, like curious and passion. And well, I'm not really sure. What's your 3rd takeaway from this conversation?
Well, my 3rd takeaway is use the city as your home. Don't look that you have a flat and then there is a city and there is a boundary. Use the whole city, and just there are so many interesting functions, people, so just go for it.
Yeah, for sure. That's kind of for me, it was kind of mind-blowing when I started thinking about the city in that sense, that this is like, Stockholm that's my city, and I can do a lot of stuff in this city. I don't have to be at my flat.
Yes.
It's sort of, everyone, not everyone, but there's a lot of focus, on your flat that you have. Like, how big is it, and what kind of, you want to change the kitchen, you want to change the living room, and so on. But I mean, put your focus out there instead, I would say.
True. This also might sound crazy, but I have a map of Stockholm where I put the functions that I need, like a bathroom facilities, where can I shower, where can I drink water, all these things that I need if I was in my flat, but I have them in the Stockholm, and also for free. So the city gives all the possibility, actually, to have a normal life without needing
for sure.
So much.
For sure. And that's kind of fun, because that's absolutely true, because I do a lot of I do my lunches and I use that as an office, but I also move around in the city in different cafes and different spaces, and I can really feel that, as you say. I have my own sort of mental list of this is a good place because this is where they keep the music down, and they have nice toilets, and they have I find it almost like a challenge, to find the different spaces that suits me best for different situations.
Yes, and it's always interesting journey to find the secret in between the buildings in the city.
Yeah, that's true.
Yes. So, do you have 3 hashtags for the episode?
Well, Ulf's lunch, of course.
Yes.
And stay curious, maybe. My city.
Great, I love them. Thank you so much, Ulf, for giving your time. And thank you so much.
I talk a lot about listening. Now I've been talking, but
at least for once.
Yeah. Okay. Have a good day.
You too. So thank you so much for listening to Urbanistica podcast. Please follow Instagram and subscribe YouTube channel for live talks. If you have any great story that makes our city smarter, please contact me. Urbanistica is being produced in collaboration with Landskapslaget, that working with landscape architecture and urban design, and also H22, Helsingborg, the making of smart city. I am Mustafa Sharif. Keep up the good work. Keep loving cities.